Hi, my name is Eryn McCraw-Smith, and today I'll be presenting my research, Student Parents in School. The purpose of this study was to find if there was a correlation between having dependents and GPA. The second purpose of this study was to find if there was a correlation between the age of the youngest dependent and GPA. I hypothesized that having children will lower GPA, and I also hypothesized that having younger children will negatively affect GPA. I hypothesized these because as a parent myself, I find I don't have as much time to study as I did before having my baby. Past research on the topic of student parents have shown that many variables correlate with how well they do in school, such as duties with the children, household chores, time management, and economic struggles. A study by McCann set aimed to research the correlation between time management and grade point average. The research was published in the Journal of Education Psychology in 1990. This research pointed at evidence that time management is a very helpful tool to having a good grade point average. He collected 288 undergraduates and had 123 of them take a survey that had 76 questions on how they managed their time, and the remaining 165 took a survey with only 46 questions. The research concluded that even just having the confidence that you're managing your time helps, even though time management changes between people. For parents, time management may be a hard thing to do. In a study done by Kindig and Bianchi for the National Council of Family Relations in 2008, it shows just how much time mothers of all types spend doing caregiving activities. They took 6,136 mothers between the ages of 15 and 64 that had dependents under the age of 13, and they had them take the American Time Usage Survey from the year 2003 and 2004. The results showed that single moms have a higher rate of employment to spend their time trying to provide for the children, and 2+ hours on top of work doing primary care activities for the dependent. It's obvious that single mothers are fighting for free time. Married women, while unemployment rates are lower, still spend more time caring for their children than single mothers do. But both parents spend a good bit of their day attending to the dependent's needs and working around their child. In a similar study about mothers and their time poverty, Waldis, Hatchie, and Conway for the Journal of Higher Education in 2018 took a sample of students from the City University, New York, and gave them a questionnaire asking them how many children, if they had any, and how old the youngest child was in each family. Waldis, Hatchie, and Conway focused their study on students that had dependents under the age of 6, and the research found that parents in school had considerably less time away from household responsibilities than people with older children or people with no children at all. Student parents with younger children were found to have spent 74 more hours on non-discretional activities than others. To bring these things together, it takes a lot for student parents to succeed. In an article done by Peterson for the Community College Journal of Research and Practice in 2015, he took 15 participants from 3 different community colleges in an area that fits the criteria of having a child and or children under the kindergarten limit, being delayed in school by at least 2 years, going for an associate degree, which is a 2-year non-traditional option, than going for a 4-year degree. In this study, Peterson found it was difficult to balance work, home life, and school and childcare for those student parents. Each student parent faced their own unique set of challenges between money, school, childcare, and work, but each of them did have the big challenges to overcome and succeed. Many were forced between choosing one or the other at some point. And it was also found that student parents have a higher dropping out rate than non-student parents. In a study by Morrow and Kinner for the British Journal of Sociology and Education in 2013, they look at the role of higher education policies and if they support the student parents the best they can. Morrow and Kinner take the findings from 40 different interviews and put them together to see how student parents describe their experiences. Morrow and Kinner find the parents often describe their experiences as a struggle for time, health, and money, backing up the previous article that stated student parents face a ton of obstacles to overcome. The student parents do not get the time the others get to study, and they are tired. The purpose of the study, done by Margaret W. Sally in her paper Adding Academics to the Work/Family Puzzle, was to look at the ways the student parents go through life with school, work, and family at home. The study uses a theoretical guide by using role conflict theory to decipher the strategies student parents use to give all to meet their demands in every role they have. It is one of the few studies to look at the master's students that are facing these challenges, even though 36% of the master's students had children in 2008. Trying to find ways to meet all expectations is tough for any student parent, and no student should be left out, no matter the level degree being obtained. Previous research found that time management is an important key in helping student parents, or anyone navigating multiple roles, to do so. It allows them to compartmentalize and focus on one of the multiple roles at a time. Martinez et al. Concluded people with multiple roles were even more aware of how much time they spent on each role. Marshall found that on top of time management, people juggling multiple roles may compartmentalize by reducing time with family to focus on work or school, and found that this made the participants feel guilty. However, this also goes the other way. As shown by Martinez, participants prioritized family over anything else. The methods for my research were pretty simple. The participants had to at least be 18 years of age and currently studying at Louisiana State University of Alexandria. Students were sent an email that contained a link to a survey monkey and brought them directly to my survey. Informed consent was present at the beginning of the survey to let the students know that they could back out at any time and that they would remain anonymous in their survey. And students completed the survey and the results were available for me to view. The materials for this survey, for this experiment, was a survey used to gather the data that I needed. On the next slide, you'll be able to see my survey that consisted of 10 questions and took an average of 46 seconds to take. The questions had simple wording to keep the participants from getting confused and in that way keeping the validity high. So here you can see questions 1 through 5. How long do you study during the day? How often do you have difficulty finding time to focus on schoolwork without distractions? What is your overall GPA? Do you have dependents under your care? How many dependents, if any, do you have? On this slide, you're able to see my questions 5 through 10. And it says, how many dependents do you have, if any? How old is the youngest dependent, if any? How often did you provide the care for the dependent? How old are you? Are you a part-time or a full-time student? Are you satisfied with your GPA? The procedure used for this experiment was a chi-square of independence. The chi-square of independence test was used to calculate the results of this study. The variables for this study are age of dependents, number of dependents, and GPA. Students take the survey. When they're finished, I get the results and mark them down. The results they get, I will then put into an Excel program, and I ran the chi-square of independence function that is available to me in Excel on the charts. From there, I have my results. My results for my first hypothesis, which is students that have dependents are less likely to have a higher grade point average than students without dependents. The variables being tested in the first chi-square of independence test were grade point average and whether or not the participant had dependents. The analysis using the chi-square of independence test sought to disprove the hypothesis students that have dependents are less likely to have a higher grade point average than those students without dependents. Using Microsoft Excel, the chi-square of independence test was run. The chi-square value was 0.579578. The p-value was found to be 0.748451. And because the p-value result is not significant because p should be less than 0.05, it's not significant. Looking at the critical value, after we find the degrees of freedom, which is 2, and you get that by you multiply row minus 1 multiplied by column minus 1, and then you'll get the degrees of freedom. We see the critical value set at 5.99. Since my chi-square value was less than the critical value of 5.99, we're able to accept the null hypothesis for the hypothesis students that have dependents are less likely to have a higher grade point average than those students without dependents. The results for hypothesis 2, which states that the age of the dependents had an effect, it states that students with younger dependents had a lower GPA than students with higher age dependents. The second chi-square of independence test was conducted to show if the age of the dependents had an effect on the student's grade point average. Looking at the second chi-square of independence test, we see the chi-square value at 0.059339. The p-value was found to be 0.9708785, and that is not significant at the p-value of p is less than 0.05. The critical value for this chi-square of independence test was 5.99, and since the chi-square value of 0.9708785 is less than the critical value of 5.99, we're able to accept the null hypothesis for the hypothesis having younger children makes a student parent's GPA lower. On this slide, we're able to see some of my results, and this was actually what I ran my first chi-square test on. You can see that no one had a 4.0. 6 people that had dependents have a GPA anywhere from 3.0 to 3.9, and 5 people without dependents had a GPA of 3.0 to 3.9, and a total of 11 people had a GPA of 3.0 to 3.9. Then we look at 2.0 to 2.9. 3 people that had dependents have a 2.0 to 2.9, and 3 people without dependents have a 2.0 to 2.9. 1.0 to 1.9, 0 people with dependents had a 1.0 to a 1.9, but 1 person had a 1.0 to a 1.9 without dependents. I had 18 people total take my quiz, and you can see 18 results, 9 of which had children, 9 of which didn't. On this table, which is the second chi-square table that I ran, we're focusing on the 9 people that did have children and their GPAs and the age of the youngest dependent. So nobody had any children 0 to 1, and nobody had a 4.0. One person had a child between the ages of 2.2 and 4 and had a GPA between 3.0 and 3.9. 2 people had a child between the ages of 5 to 9, and had a GPA of 3.0 to 3.9. 3 people had children between the ages of 10 to 15 and had a GPA of 3.0 to 3.9. Then we go to the 2.0 to 2.9 GPA range, and we see that 3 people had a child ages 2 to 4 and had a 2.0 to 2.9. And then nobody had a 1.0 to a 1.9. So 4 people had a child 2 to 4, 2 people had a child 5 to 9, and 3 people had a child 10 to 15, and most everyone had 3.0 to 3.9. My discussion for this research says the results showed no significant correlation between dependence and grade point average in the first hypothesis, and no significant correlation between student parents that have younger dependents have a lower grade point average for the second hypothesis. It is important to remember that there are confounding variables that could have affected a person's grade point average other than just having dependence, having someone to help with the dependence, cohabitating with a significant other, how well you're sleeping, how much you work. The daily schedules of anybody could help improve or worsen a grade point average for students with or without dependence. The variables in this research show no significant correlation between the variables. Future research may have a larger sample size to work with and find even more results, so they might get a more accurate number than my small sample size. Parents juggling dependence, schoolwork, and social life, and sometimes work, has to take a toll somewhere in their life. Yes, dependents give motivation to do the best the parent can, but where is the line for reserving some time for themselves? With a larger sample size, less confounding variables, and a better experiment, a future research project could have endless possibilities and shine some light on the struggles and overcoming of student parents.